Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ABH startup, scale-up of the year. My name is Tahira Hardy, and I'm the Community and Operations Officer here at ABH. We are so excited to have you join us today and to learn from two of our heroes, Charlot Magayi and AYODEJI ArikawE. Before we get to their keynotes and their presentations, we're going to do a quick hero hot seat to get to know our heroes better. So while we do that, I encourage you to please open the chat, say hi, and let us know where you're joining from. So Charlotte, Ayo, if I can ask you to both put your cameras on, and I'd like to start by saying thank you so much from the ABH team and from our community for taking the time to join us today. We know you're both super, super busy, but I personally am very, very excited to hear your presentations.
Hey Tahira, looks like you have to put my video on.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, same here.
Let me quickly change that. How are you guys doing today while I get the video permissions sorted?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you, Ayo?
I'm doing good, Charlotte. Been a minute.
Cool, Charlotte and Ayo, I've promoted you guys to co-host, so let's see if you can put your cameras on now. Yeah, there we go. I can see you, Charlotte.
Hi.
Oh, Ayo, we're matching shirts today.
We are actually.
I was gonna wear that. Now I feel bad.
I see we also have some familiar faces in the chat. It's good to see Kevin, Ethel. We got some friends from Nigeria, Abuja, Zambia, Congo. Super cool to have you guys joining from across the continent. So I am going to get right into the hero hot seat. Charlotte, how are you today? Well, I already asked how are you, but how have things been since winning Earthshot at the end of last year?
Things have been chaotic. I think that's the right answer. It was supposed to be all lit and glam, but really it just put so much responsibility on us. So it's been very exciting, but super chaotic. And we're just running around trying to figure out how to behave now that we are Earthshot Prize winners.
Oh, that's so interesting to behave. I'm looking forward to see a well-behaved Charlotte, although you're usually pretty good. Ayo, you've been blowing up my LinkedIn this past month. How are you doing juggling all of these big wins so early in the year?
Doing well. I mean, pretty much like Charlotte, trying to just figure it all out, ensure able to like execute on the plans. And yeah, we've also tried to do like a lot of expansion and hiring. So that's taking like quite a lot. But yeah, we're surviving, and it's election season in Nigeria, yeah, also. So just sort of like combining that also has been pretty intense.
Busy start to the year for everyone. So now to the fun questions. Charlotte, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Right now, I think the only thing that makes sense is to not be jet lagged, because I'm gonna be moving across Africa a lot, and some places do not have like, you know, direct flights, so it's gonna be really hard. So if I could have that superpower, like I arrive in a country immediately, you know, adjust to their time zones and just be okay, that would be really awesome.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of that, but personally, yeah, jet lag is the worst. As you, I hopefully will not find out too much about in the coming months. But Ayo, what is the most useful advice you've gotten so far personally?
I think if we don't quit, that's sort of like from like one of my mentors. I think it's also like a popular quote, and just essentially to keep going, like regardless of when there are highs or lows, because I guess like on this journey there's been many highs, many lows, and a few highs here and there. But yeah, just like don't quit, basically.
And Charlotte, what's the most useful advice you've gotten so far professionally?
The most useful advice was, I actually got it like 2 weeks ago. Someone telling me to not give in to the pressure of doing everything because everyone is offering support, and just sticking to the plan, even though it seems like we have enough resources to not stick to the plan anymore. But yeah, someone just told me it is chaotic, and if you make it more chaotic, it's gonna blow up. So just like go with the original plan either way, even if the rest of the world is pushing you not to.
Mm-hmm. So don't do too much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know, but I'll try.
And then Ayo, back to you. For early in your entrepreneurship journey, what was a life-saving investment that Thrive got?
I think it definitely a first investment. That was from an organization called Ventures Platform. I mean, they've gone on to fund like quite a lot of organizations across Africa. They gave us, I think, $20,000 then, like 2017, and it was like really, really significant. Just like putting up the right structures. So yeah, that's definitely a very first investment.
Okay. And then Charlotte, early in your entrepreneurship journey, what was a difficult sacrifice that you had to make?
I think that's very crazy because I've made very many difficult sacrifices. So I started my business in Nairobi, and I named my business after the place I grew up in Nairobi, and I had to leave early on in my career because I realized it wasn't going to work where we set up. And initially, those are the people whose lives I wanted to impact it, but it was going to be impossible to grow my business and actually impact more lives while still there. So having to up and leave and completely get out, like I couldn't continue operating in Nairobi, in Mukuru. It was painful, but then I think it was a good sacrifice, like leaving one small demographic to go serve a bigger one, and that helped.
Okay. On a little bit of a lighter note, Ayo, what is the most adventurous thing that you've ever done?
So once a year, I and a couple of friends like pack our bags, and then we just go to like really remote places where there's like no internet, no phone, nothing. It's like 4 days. I'm going on that one in April. So yeah, it's really interesting, and yeah, just find ourselves, I guess. But yeah, it's fun sometimes.
Okay, I'm assuming that going to lead into my last question for you is, what do you do to de-stress, since we know being an entrepreneur is very stressful? So is that one of the ways that helps?
That's one of the rest, definitely. I try to watch movies also. Yeah, that's like when I'm not working, when I'm trying to catch, when I'm just trying to rest, most times I do movies. So yeah.
Any recommendations? What's the last good one you watched?
It's Nigerian. It's called Far From Home. It's really nice. You guys check it out. It's on Netflix.
Okay, cool. I'll give it a look. And Charlotte, what do you do to de-stress in the chaos?
Yeah, so sometimes I watch movies. So the next movie I'm gonna watch is Far From Home. I love Nigerian movies. I'm not sure, but I really love them. So what do I do to distress? I mean, very many things. One of them is calling people like Kevin. So I have like a bunch of friends who I will call for no reason. They always answer, but also just getting out of my head and trying to do something random, something. I have 2 kids, so it helps. Like sometimes when it gets really tough and you go talk to a 6-year-old about the most like insignificant thing that is bothering her head, is like, then you help her try to solve that or play like a really silly game. It helps you get out of this world of thinking about, moving into a new market when you haven't even like figured out the market that you're in currently. So that helps.
Oh, it's good to know. Kids, man, they just make things so much easier, but also so much more difficult, I suppose, at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Ayo, I'm going to say thank you for a little bit, and we're going to jump into Charlotte's keynote first, but we'll have you back soon. So next up, we've got our first keynote from Charlotte, who is the founder and CEO of Mukuru Clean Stoves Kenya. where she will be sharing about her journey with expanding her business beyond its Kenyan home. So at Mukuru Clean Stoves, they repurpose locally sourced waste materials to manufacture improved, efficient, and reliable cook stoves. And they partner with local women business owners to distribute to the last mile. Charlotte was an ABH 2021 Top 10 Hero. She also very recently won the Earthshot Prize, as I mentioned earlier. She was a 2022 Forbes 30 Under 30 and is also an Echoing Green Fellow. So we'll also have a shoot Q&A after Charlotte's talk. So if you have any questions for her, please pop them in the Q&A box where I'll pick a few for her to answer live. But yeah, so Charlotte, we're super excited to have you join us. So over to you.
Thank you, Tahira. Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you all here. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Charlot Magayi. I don't know if you can see my screen, Tahira. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure where it went. Yeah, but my name is Charlot Magayi. I'm from Kenya, Nairobi specifically, and I have a business called Mukuru Clean Stoves. And what we do is we use recycled metal to manufacture improved cook stoves, and then we partner with local women business owners who then help us distribute to the last mile. So we've been doing this since 2017, and so far we have distributed in 3 counties in Kenya. And right now we're doing this thing where we're trying to get into new markets in Africa. And I guess that's what we're going to be talking about today, regional growth and expansion. So I have a few slides here that I'm going to share that literally have nothing on them except like really beautiful pictures from the people that we work with or the people whose lives we have impacted, to sort of just walk you through what I'm talking about, which is, if it gets boring, stare at your screen, because you'll see then a very beautiful, beautiful picture, you know, of a woman holding a stove, cooking, laughing, or something, just something wholesome. So again, I started this in 2017, so it's been about almost 6 years. We're turning 6 this August, and for the last 5 years, we have expanded across Kenya. Not crazy expansion really, because we're only available in 3 counties. We've sold about 250,000 clean cook stoves. But because it's been 6 years, we are in that position. Well, since we turned about 4, we have been looking into ways where how we can expand into other regions, what countries, you know, would be benefit from our clean cook stoves, what countries would be easy for us to enter as a Kenyan company, or, you know, just as a foreigner. I think when you're expanding, those are some of the questions you have to ask yourself. And so after 2 years, we settled on Ghana. And I will tell you why. And I know this is coming as a surprise for a lot of people who know me on the call, because you was Nigeria until maybe 2 seconds ago. But I will explain later why Ghana was making better sense. But first, I would love to talk to you about the problem that we are trying to solve and why we are taking our solution across Africa. So again, what I do is manufacture improved cook stoves, and many households in Africa, not just in Kenya, use open fires, use firewood, use 3 stones. Like in this picture, there's a lady using a 3-stone fire to cook, and there's a lot of smoke, mostly you know, going directly at her face, and she's inhaling that. So that is the major problem. And we have about, the African population is 1.2 billion, 700 million people are affected by this picture you're seeing here. So household air pollution, high cost of fuel, poverty. And so that is the problem we're trying to fix. So we fixed it in Kenya by working with local women business owners to distribute. So the opportunity to go into Africa is just as simple as we have been able to do this thing in Kenya. And we believe that other African regions have the same structures, have the same sort of like lifestyles, and we would be able to penetrate similar markets with very minimal, if any, changes to our business model or distribution model. And so why we're doing this, or why we're trying to scale into Africa, is because, simply put, we want to save lives. But also the vision of Mukuru Clean Stoves is to eradicate household air pollution and energy poverty across Africa. Initially, the vision of the company, which changes a lot our vision initially was to eradicate household air pollution and energy poverty in a small slum in Kenya called Mukuru. And then it became a little bit bigger to eradicate household air pollution in rural Kenya, then really larger, all of Kenya. And then now it's grown into, we want to actually kill household air pollution and energy poverty across the entire African continent. And this comes with, growth as well within the business, where you're able to solve problems, you're able to grow, and then you're able to dream a little bit bigger. And maybe, I don't know, in the next 5-10 years, we might decide that we can do this in Southeast Asia and Latin America as well. But I think there are a few questions you have to ask yourself when you're going to a new market. Like, does it matter? Number one, it matters to some people, or most people, in rural areas in Kenya. We have rural areas in Nigeria, for instance, or in Ghana, for instance, but does it matter to them? And when it comes to that, you're going to face challenges. Like, for us, the biggest problem was household air pollution is there, but do they want to address it? Is it a problem for them? Is it a problem that they identify as one? Again, because you're dealing with people who are living in poverty, maybe they earn $40 to $100 monthly income. And so the question that becomes, even if we recognize this as a problem, we have other problems. Like, for instance, we need our children to be able to eat. So are we going to buy a stove, or are we going to buy food and cook it on an open fire with firewood that we collect in the nearest forest or bush? And once that is a problem that you realize you can't fix through maybe education, awareness creation, market demos, or maybe producing products that are affordable for the entire continent, then you move on to the next question, which would be, how big is this problem that you're trying to solve? And this really informs whether you should scale or you should leave it alone. Because if you are solving a problem in Kenya and you want to solve it across Africa as well, but you realize it's really big in Kenya, but not necessarily in Nigeria, then it's not necessarily a problem. It's not going to be beneficial for you. You're not going to create enough impact or enough profit to move into that market. But for Mukuru Clean Stoves, the case is different, because this problem is big in Kenya, but it's bigger in Nigeria. Like, household air pollution is a bigger problem in Western Africa compared to Southern Africa, for instance, and East Africa is just in the middle there. And then you go back to the question that's very, very important, is why do you as an entrepreneur, why do you as an organization or as a team care? Because at the end of the day, you're gonna meet so many challenges. And if you do not address, if you don't understand what is the one thing that is going to keep you within this market, the one thing that is going to make you want to stay when it gets tough, then really you shouldn't get there, because it's going to get tough. And when you don't have a core reason, when your why does not exist, when your why is not big enough or not important enough, then you will abandon the solution once you realize that it's not working as fast or it's not working as flawlessly as you assumed it would. And I guess for me, as an entrepreneur, my why has remained the same over the years. I wanted to solve this problem for children like my daughters who got burnt, for women in my community who inhaled smoke and suffered from respiratory tract infections. So I still have the same why, and this can change over time, but mine hasn't really changed. I still want to give the same opportunities to different African households. So that is the reason why it might be easier for us to stay within these markets when it gets tough, when we scale. And then you move on to how you're gonna scale into this market. So something like stoves or food, for instance, in Nigeria, like you will find maybe like a local vendor selling food, and they sell it in very, very different locations. We have something similar in almost every African market, and that can be something that we would be able to take advantage of. So we partner with local women business owners to sell our stoves. Within any African market, you will find maybe women selling Ankara or selling any other types of products, but there are a lot of them within a market, and they can be, your first early adopters or your first sales agents within that market. And so that makes market entry a little bit easier for you, because you haven't really changed anything in your model. You've just used the same you've used the same style to get into that market, and you just basically the only difference now is language. Like, how are you communicating the importance of these stoves to get them to be onboarded onto your solution and want to help you scale it? And then the other question becomes, which markets first? And this is interesting for us because over the past maybe 2 years, we've really struggled on which markets would work best. We've changed it so many times, it's ridiculous. And we settled on different markets at different times. And we had we would sit down and brainstorm and write down the pros and cons of getting into that market first, and realizing like a market like Nigeria looked so good for over a year. And then just recently you realize that if you want to set up like a business, like distributing stoves, for instance, and you set it up in Nigeria, we realized it was going to be hard for us to set up a factory there and then distribute across Western Africa from Nigeria. But it was seemingly easier to do that in Ghana. So Ghana is a dramatically smaller market, but we're setting up our factory there and then distributing from Ghana across Western Africa. So Nigeria, Senegal, and all the other countries we can access from there. And this is interesting because getting into Ghana is more expensive as an entrepreneur. Like, setting up the business there is way more expensive than setting it up in Nigeria. Land is more expensive, in Ghana. Registering a business more expensive in Ghana. But that is the initial cost. Once that is done, then it becomes cheaper to produce in Ghana and then distribute across other African markets, even though in West Africa, Nigeria would be the bigger market. And we will be making stoves in Ghana, but distribution is, we are focusing it on Nigeria. We're making them in Ghana, distributing most of it in Nigeria, some of it in Ghana and the other countries, just because Nigeria has a bigger market for us. So once that is figured out, then, and it takes time. For us, it's taken many years of figuring out which markets. And some people, it takes a slightly shorter time. And it could have been also lack of resources. Many times we wanted to move, but we just couldn't afford to, go into this market. So which brings me to partners and resources that can help you really scale into or across regions or within this market. And the first one of them for me would be the one partner that you would think is, not even think, it's the last partner you go to after you've set up, after you've done everything, the people who sell our stoves. So our model, the way it works and the way we want it to keep working, is distributing our stoves through local women business owners. They're the ones who can sell our stoves better than anybody else because they're the ones who go through, the impacts of household air pollution. They understand it better than anybody else, and they can sell our stove. Now, within any African market, nobody needs to tell you, like, women are the ones who say, even if they don't own the shops or the businesses, they're the ones who are selling products there, and they sell day-to-day products to women, their fellow women and men, and so they can sell a stove. And so that is what we had to figure out first. Like, how do we partner with women in Ghana or in Nigeria or in Senegal, the way we partner with women in Kenya? And are we using the same language to communicate what you're trying to achieve? Are we paying the same commissions? Because of just the way lifestyle, because of standards of living as well, you have to figure that out. And is that still profitable for a business like Mukuru? And then you come back to your bigger partners after you've figured out how to work with your smaller partners who really are your bigger partners. For us, the local women we work with are the biggest partners because without them, we don't sell stoves. But in order to be able to set up and actually have a profitable business, we have to come back to our bigger partners who actually have the resources to get us within this market. And so for Mukuru, we have financial partners who will provide us with debt or grant financing to move into that market. And then we have carbon or financing partners as well. And so these are partners who basically, they give us an assured extra revenue source. So we sell stoves across Nigeria. It's a big market. Even if you just target 1 million people for the first 2 or 3 years, you sell those stoves, you earn credits, it gives you the runway to sell or to build and sell more stoves. And once that is settled, for us, we have a partnership with a carbon financing partner, and then we have the financing for it. Then that is when you decide, okay, now let's move into that market. And then you walk back and to the first step of how do we set up. So that is why Nigeria was the actual market for a long time until recently, when it's like, okay, in terms of market entry, in terms of even setting up, Nigeria could be cheaper, but at the end of the day, it's going to be more expensive. So let's move back to Ghana. And for your bigger partners, it's always easy to go back to them and change countries. Like, I thought that was scary, and I would go back to them and realize it's not that scary. They want to make profit as well, and they want impact if they're impact partners. So if you can communicate why one market is better than the other, even though you've been telling them for a year that that market is perfect, then they're okay with it, as long as what you're saying makes sense. And then for us, I like this last slide. It's called The Impact for Africa, because there's this book, the last book I read, well, not the rest, but a book I recently read by Wangari Maathai, who was an environmental champion from Kenya. It's called The Challenge for Africa, and basically talking about what we're doing for our environment, for our women and stuff. And so for our scale-up plans or expansion plans or growth plans into Africa, whatever it is that we are doing, how are we thinking about it in terms of the impact for Africa? And so Mukuru, right now, the impact for Kenya is 250,000 stoves use our clean cook stoves. And within a year, they save about $20.6 million US in fuel consumption costs that can then go into education, better meals, and just building up their businesses and stuff like that. And for households, it's small, amounts, but it matters. And then there is also the carbon that we get out of, we try to avoid when people use our stoves, the carbon that is avoided from being emitted into the atmosphere, and what this looks like from an African perspective. Like, if we have been able to do that with 250,000 stoves only in Kenya only, and Kenya is not even the most affected by housing air pollution, that would be countries like maybe Sierra Leone, then you bring this solution to these other African countries and you don't double that impact. And it's not even 10x at this point, it's major. And if you're able to communicate that and provide your partners or your shareholders, provide them with the facts of how this is going to actually help Africa, then that's it. You have your growth plans well on paper. You have your growth plans, written down really well. There are very many challenges aside from, a business plan that you could write out really well in terms of expansion. But this is just, a brief look into what it looks like to move into Africa, into the rest of the African market for you, whether you're coming from Egypt or South Africa to Nigeria or Kenya, and just putting that impact and putting it together with the profit. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And if you can show most of your partners, because most times you will have financial partners and impact partners, but if you put it all together, and for Mukuru stoves, it's as simple as if one stove is sold, we make a profit and we also make impact. So it's one and the same thing, then there you have it. So this is what Mukuru Clean Stoves is trying to achieve for Africa. And thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. I found that super interesting, especially how you chose Ghana over Nigeria. I mean, I was one of those people that was taken by a little bit of surprise, but I'm also super excited to see the impact for Africa that you've got coming up. So we've got a few audience questions for you. The first one is from Nicholas Lawanda, and he asked, what has been the major challenge that your business faced and how did you overcome it?
Thank you for that question. The biggest challenge has been the biggest challenge since the beginning, which is very, very interesting, because we know that there is this problem of household air pollution, of high costs of fuel. But when you go to, I have a very funny story about my grandma who doesn't use a Mukuru stove. I have been selling a Mukuru stove for the past 5 years, but because my grandma is almost 100 and I tell her that household air pollution could kill you, her response is very simple. I'm not dead yet, so it must be a lie. So the biggest barrier for us, the biggest challenge is the demographic that we are trying to, bring a solution to, not recognizing this as a problem. Sometimes it's just lack of information. Sometimes it's that the poverty rates are so high, it's not a conversation they're willing to have. But for the most part, it's just not knowing how to communicate it in a way that is welcoming for them as well. And so how we address that is, again, just trying to partner with women who can communicate this better than the rest of us, because we've done our desktop research, we've done our field research, but at the end of the day, if you see your community influencers saying that a product works, that a product is important, then they want to buy it, then they're trusting in that product. But if you're an outsider walking into a rural area, especially if you're a young woman with your other young women trying to bring a new product, it's like selling your grandma makeup at this point. She doesn't need it, like she won't take it.
Very interesting. And then Nicholas Bry asked, so how did you, who helped you understand the difference between Nigeria and Ghana and helped you ultimately decide to shift the factory? Because I know you put a lot of work into sort of figuring out Nigeria was the place to go.
So funny story, Nigerians helped me figure out that Nigeria was not the right. So Nigeria is the right market. So this is the thing. We're going into West Africa and Nigeria is going to be our biggest market, but we're setting up the factory in Ghana. And the reason we're doing this is because we, for a year, like Tahira knows, I have been in Nigeria like so many times, trying to find land, trying to register a business. It's been chaotic because I'm also using, debt financing, people's money to try to do this. And then I come back to them and I'm like, so remember how I have been doing this? I'm not doing it anymore. Really, because most of the time from the entrepreneurs that I've talked to, interacted with, both from Ghana and Nigeria, I have, friends like, I haven't really talked to Ayo because apparently we're not friends. We'll talk about that later. But the friends that I have talked to, it's very difficult to send a product, from Nigeria to Ghana, but it's very easy to send it from Ghana to Nigeria. So that is number one. Number two, it's very hard to set up in Ghana, but the Ghanaian government has this thing where they're very welcoming to, entrepreneurs from, different parts of the world wanting to set up there, as long as, you're getting to create jobs. And Nigeria has the same thing, but Ghana's is a little bit better. So it's more expensive, but they offer you a little bit more support. Number three is, the places that we were going to be able to set up in Nigeria, the places where it was going to be possible was going to be so far away from Lagos. And then there was the issue of how do we get the materials we need there? Whereas in Ghana, because it's a smaller country, the place where we got land is, for instance, 3.5 hours away from their capital city. So it becomes a little bit easier to get the things that we need to go there. And then number three is just because we were not setting up in one country. The reason for our expansion was to set up a factory in one specific country, but then distribute across, the entire region. So for West Africa, we're going to set up in Nigeria. For Southern Africa, we're going to set up in.
Oh, have we lost Charlotte? Okay, I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. So I'm going to pause the questions, but I see that, Charlotte, we lost you for a brief second when you got to South Africa.
Yes. Yeah, so I am basically in darkness, but I bought bundles, so we're good. But yeah, so those are some of the reasons why Nigeria is still our biggest market. Like for all the other countries that we're going to ever expand to for the next few years, Nigeria is going to be where most of our customers are based.
Thank you. A bit of a lighter question from Joven. How do you handle your cook stoves with your long, colorful fingernails?
Wow. I always have an answer ready. Every bridesmaid, and it was a requirement, but that's not true. I always have long nails. But I have learned the art of doing it because I've been doing it for so many years, so they don't even break. Like every time someone sees assurance, they're like, "How are you holding that? Touch anything they want to know them with my nails?" Is my youngest daughter because she's scared of them.
Oh, well, I'm sure she's going to get used to them soon if you've always got them. We've got a question from one of your super fans as well. Kevin is asked, how do you come up with the price points for new markets?
So hi, Kevin. Yeah, I'm a fan as well. So how we do that is that's very simple, doing research on similar products within that market and figuring out, the purchasing power of that market. So for instance, in Nigeria, I have a friend who has a factory. It's called Power Stove. And they sell their stoves at $10 as well, just like the Mukuru stove. So that was making it very simple and easier for us to come up with the pricing for the stove. In places like Ghana, it's okay for it to be a little bit, more expensive, just because Ghana is a super, they are a little bit more expensive economy. But we come up with it by doing research on similar products, research on the purchasing power within that market, the number of people within that market also matters. Like Ghana doesn't have enough people for you to give them a lower rate, for instance. So yeah.
Interesting. Then another question from Nicholas is, do you leverage communities of users to propagate your product, with some users becoming ambassadors or referrers?
That is actually the best way to get into any market, leveraging. For instance, as we work with maybe local women groups, we'll find the most popular women's group, and then from them we'll get two sets of people. So one will be the sales agents who sell our stoves, and the second one will be the early adopters. So they'll either high poverty rates, they get it for free. If they are maybe in an urban area, they have a little bit of money, they get it for a subsidized rate, then they become our early adopters and they become the ambassadors now. So that is the deal. You get a stove at a subsidized rate or at a lower cost, and you preach to your neighbors about the benefits of using that stove.
Very clever. And then a quick one from Overking is, he's asking, how is your stove actually powered?
Oh yeah, that's usually a very a question that people always ask me then, because I forgot to say our stoves are powered using briquettes. We were gonna make, again, just trying to do everything, we were gonna make ethanol stoves as well, but then we realized we need to focus, and the focus now is the stoves that we're doing currently. And something that I read is we're doing research into how we can make our fuels malaria fighting. So because we just read this, I recently came across a report from the CDC talking about how children and women especially are catching malaria just before they go to bed. So even when they have mosquito nets, they still end up having malaria. And before they go to bed is the time when they're cooking and eating. And so we are partnering with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're setting up a model African home in Homa Bay. It's like a really cool project. It's weird, I forgot to mention this, but we're going to be doing research, testing it out to see if our briquettes can fight, malaria by turning households into mosquito repellents. And yes, the whole thing is like patented. So sorry, everybody, but yeah.
Patented before the trial, but that is incredible. If it gets working, you got to keep us posted on how that trial goes. I'm very excited to see what that's gonna do, if it can fight malaria. I think one more quick one from Irene is, Charlotte, are you planning to come to Rwanda anytime soon?
Oh yeah, so that's one of the markets we're staying away from. Unless we come up with a different product. Rwanda is Rwanda is a small country, but an African giant, in the sense that they're growing very, very quickly. I call it like the Europe of, Africa. And this is because things like household air pollution is going to be news in Rwanda very, very soon. And so if you're selling LPG or solar stoves, then that is a really good market. But with the product that we have right now, it's a complete miss. And I know people who've entered the Rwandan market with similar products and exited very, very quickly because it doesn't quite make sense. So Rwanda is one of those places which I love because of Kevin, but they're growing too quickly for my own good. So no, I am not coming to that market. But I'm coming to visit because it's clean and beautiful.
Cool. At least you'll come visit us. At least. The follow-on from Molly is, are you going to reach Botswana?
Oh yeah, so what we're doing with Southern Africa is they're very, very small markets. Southern Africa is weird, but what we're doing is we're setting up one factory to target the whole of it. We are testing stoves in Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa currently. In 2024, we're setting up a factory in South Africa to basically take care of the entire Southern African countries. So we are going to South Africa. Botswana is a big one, but we're going to do South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and then Botswana. And that's how it's going to go. But we are going to Botswana. It's not too big of a market. It's just that we cover all our bases. And unlike Rwanda, it's still going to have, how about it.
Very cool, very interesting. Personally excited to see you going back to South Africa since that's my home. So definitely gonna watch the space. We've got 4 more questions in the Q&A.
Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to mention about South Africa, and the reason why we actually have no choice but to go there is because we're partnering with MultiChoice. And so for the next 5 to 10 years of Mukuru clean stoves, for every expansion that we do, we're partnering with MultiChoice, and how it works is they're just going to be advertising for us for free because they are AdShot partners. So every time we enter a new market, you're going to see Mukuru stoves on MultiChoice channels. They're big on Southern Africa, but they're going to try and do it for West Africa and East Africa as well.
Very cool. An extra way to leverage the Earthshot. So that's super clever. We have 4 more questions in the Q&A, but I think we got to hand over to Ayo's keynote. So Charlotte, if I could ask you to type those answers so everyone gets to sort of hear from you. But thank you so much. Don't go anywhere because I'm going to call you back in a little bit for our little fireside chat where you can ask Ayo why he's not your friend. But yeah, thanks so much, Charlotte. It was a very interesting presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next up, we have our second keynote from Ayo, who's the co-founder and CTO of Thrive Agric, Nigeria, and he's going to be talking about his experience fundraising. Thrive Agric is a fast-growing agricultural technology company passionate about ensuring food security. So they link farmers to capital, data-driven best practices, and give them access to local and global markets for their commodities. Ayo was an ABH 2019 Top 10 Hero, the 2022 overall winner and direct winner of the Visa Everywhere Initiative, a winner of the 2022 AYODEJI Africa Challenge, and has recently signed up as a mentor for Google for Startups Accelerator. So again, we'll have a short Q&A after Ayo's presentation. So if you have any questions for him, please post them in the Q&A box. We'll pick a few for him to answer live. And yeah, Ayo, we're super excited to hear about your illustrious fundraising journey. So over to you.
Hi guys. Yeah, I guess I'll just run to it. So maybe I'll start by just sharing a bit around Thrive and what we do. So essentially, our vision at Thrive is to build an Africa that feeds itself on the world, and we mean that literally. So we've built something called the Agriculture Operating System, and it's a set of apps that allows us to, on one end, provide credit to farmers in form of input loans. And then it's because like for most farmers actually more smaller farmers in Africa, starting in Nigeria where we started, there's very little access to data for banks or anyone to provide credit to them. And so we capture that data with our tech. And then essentially banks rely on us to provide credit to farmers. On the second end, we use that same data to provide the farmers advice. So things from based on soil, based on weather, just how to go about their processes to ensure they can achieve the right yield. I think today our farmers are doing about 3 times the national average in our crops of focus. And then lastly, we ensure our farmers have access to premium markets. So today, farmers lose about 40% of their harvest to post-harvest losses, and then the other 60%, they have to sell through a chain of about 6 middlemen. So I try to fix that. Through us, we can sell to any off-taker that's on our platform. And just sharing a bit about our journey. So I think when we started, I mentioned we got funded in 2017, and maybe telling a bit about that story because it's not on this slide. So there was this venture platformers that then used to run an accelerator. Now they are they're a full-blown fund. They raised about $46 million recently to invest in like more companies. So you guys should probably check them out if you're doing a startup. It's ventures platform. And I think like one of the things that happened is we had literally, we walked into the office then, it was a selection process, and we said what we're doing, explain what we're doing at Thrive. And I think one of the things they found very impressive was my co-founders at then was coming like right from like our farmers' locations to the interview. And for them was like, okay, we are, as much as like we're funding idea stages, we're investing in companies really early, you guys are actually doing the work. So we didn't have a fancy deck with all the growth numbers and projections, and we're asking for money to start. We had started regardless, and then they were excited about the fact that we had started regardless. And so their 20K could then be the booster. And so I think like one of my lessons from there, which I share with other startups, is like literally like no matter what it is, like you want to start, no matter how small, even with these 2 customers or 5 customers, but just stay consistent, because when you meet your first investors, they want to know you've started. It's unlikely like anyone is going to fund an idea that is just on paper. And we went on to win ABH in 2019. We got $100,000. $65,000. I remember from being top 10. But I think the best part of that was I actually got a selfie now on the Campbell. I still have it till now, so if you don't, sorry. And I think as at then, we had about 35,000 farmers. We had given about $10 million in financing, and it looked like we were on a rocket ship, like everything was going perfectly. And then in 2021, I think COVID came, and we had like, this time when it looked like, oh, we were going to shut down as an organization. We had broken supply chains due to the restrictions during COVID, and just decreased like farmers' production, especially our farmers in the livestock space. And that meant we couldn't meet up with payments. It was actually a really bad time for us as an organization. That was one of the many times when we felt like this was the end of Thrive Agric. And I think this was like just coming out of coming out of ABH, and just a few months later, when everyone had like big success stories, big partnerships that they had signed, we were about to shut down. And I still remember like quite a lot of folks from ABH would reach out, especially people that were in our top 10 batch, and just like, oh, what do you need? How can we support you? And just like lots of love from people around at that point in time. And I think one of the things we did was we actually didn't shut down. One of our lessons from there and just how to scale through that was, on one end, we decided to recruit experts into the team. So that then only my co-founder and I were pretty much like the management team. And we brought in about 7 additional people. So we brought in people who were in risk, we brought in people who had experience in supply chain, and just managing the processes end to end. And in this fundraising journey, I think one of the biggest things you see investors look out for is your team, right? Like, what's the expertise, especially when you get to a stage where you're doing really big numbers, you're expanding, they want to know like you have the right people. And we got our people on board. So we got our CFO to join us for the first time, we got our head of risk, and not really significant people come on board the team, which was like super, super useful for us and has been useful for us in our fundraising journey. And I think that's one advice I give. You want to go on this journey, ensure you get the right people. We've now scaled up to a team of about 2,000 people that work at Thrive today. And I would say that it would have been literally impossible to manage that if you don't have the right team. Because secondly, we did our best to manage investors. So one of the things we always did was we always communicate, right? And I think like whether you are going through a crisis or you're just a founder, try to start a startup, or you've raised some sort of funding, even if it's $1,000, right? Create an habit of sending like regular updates to your investors, letting them know what's going on, even if you're literally about to shut down, right? Just keep them in the loop. Like, let them not have to read about what's going on in your organization online. Like, ensure you control the narrative. So that's something we did. And last thing, which is we just did not quit. And we'll wake up every day as a team and we said, we'll just figure out how to do this better. We'll stay true to our vision because it was very clear for us. If we're going to get Africa to feed ourselves on the world, and we believe that we were the best people to do that, then it means that if we failed in doing that, then it just wouldn't happen. And so we wake up every morning and stay true to the goals, stay true to the vision, and just show up, essentially. I think I read somewhere that 80% of how successful, 80% of success is just about showing up, like being there every day. And everyone knows, like, oh, if you want to know anything about clean stoves, then go to Charlot, because like she's the one doing it. So that's to be your story, right? Like, no matter how bad things are going, just keep your shop open, keep telling your story, and stay consistent. And I think that was it for us. And going past COVID, we've sort of scaled. So last year we launched in Ghana, Kenya, Zambia, and Tanzania. I'll be doing like still really small operations in this market. We've now also scaled to about 500,000 farmers. We've been able to disburse $150 million in credit to farmers. And we've created about 800,000 metric tons. Just to give some perspective to these numbers, so the team at Thrive today, our farmers at Thrive today contribute about 8% of the maize consumed in the country as a whole, and we contributed about 50% of the grains in the National Grains Reserve from our farmers' harvest. So it's really, really significant. Yeah, and I think just a bit around like some of the journey in terms of how we've gone post ABH. So in 2021, we got $100,000 from the World Food Program, and then getting to 2022, we got a grant from USAID too, about $1.75 million. Then we were able to get debt funding from like local commercial banks in Nigeria to scale our operations. Raised about $57 million from that. Then won the Visa Award, which is about $100,000, and won the Youth Challenge just recently, a couple of weeks ago, and that was an extra $1 million. And it's been like very intense year. Just being able to raise all of these, and I think that in terms of like practical steps on how to raise, honestly, I would say I'll say that on the next slide, essentially. The first one is really build a strong network. So for most of these people, we are very intentional about building relationships, very intentional about staying connected with people. A lot of times people walk into a room and the first thing you're looking at is, oh, who is the CEO of this grant organization, or who is this investor? But you're not really connecting with everyone. I know people who would say that I will not take an investor meeting unless it's a partner. If it's an analyst sent in the email, I'm not interested. But forgetting that in 3 years' time, the analyst could be the partner. So people can tell when you're just playing a game, when you're not really intentional about building relationships, when you're not intentional about like caring how they are doing, what they are going through, and it's all about the money to you. They will tell. And even a lot of times when you get no the first time, just to stay intentional, build a relationship, stay within that network, and eventually one of them is going to turn out good. So I would say, keep your network strong. I think I had someone said your net worth is essentially the strength of your network, and so that's like being our story. Like, we're very intentional about building our network. The second thing is have the right team. So surround yourself with like pretty smart people, and then if you're if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably in the wrong room. So you want to hire people that are smarter than you, that can do better things than you. At a certain stage in your organization, you want to be able to think strategically, think about growth, see the big picture. And at that point in time, you want people that you can trust, right? So don't be afraid to hire somebody who is going to earn higher than you, or who has a degree better than you do. Those are people that are really going to take your company forward. So super important that you're able to get the right people, get the right team, to just work on different aspects of the company. The third thing I would say, coming through COVID and then being able to fundraise, is be humble enough to ask for help, right? Don't don't try to figure this out alone. I'm one of the things I'm very grateful for going to ABH has really been like the community of founders that we got. So like 9 other people who are always constantly watching out for you. And now even just the bigger ABH family as a whole, learning, we're going out for hangouts from time to time, just sharing about businesses, trying to figure out like what's going on, how can we help you, can we make an introduction to this person for you? And we've seen like a lot of that just really scale up. And then the last thing, as I said, is what I shared earlier is frequently share updates. Treat your investors, your shareholders, open communications, even people that say no to you, right? Just keep them updated on what's going on in your company, what's your progress, what's your growth. Don't be afraid to tell them the bad stuff, right? Most times investors have either worked with a lot of companies or have run companies themselves. So they don't expect it to be all good. And that's when like they're more than happy to help. So I would say this is sort of like the lessons coming through COVID. And I would say this is sort of like the lessons that helped us to actually have this sort of growth we had post-COVID till now. If there are questions, I'll probably be able to deep dive further, but that's pretty much it for now.
Thanks so much, Ayo. That was super interesting. I loved the point on how you should always control your narrative, and also where you touched on building a strong network, especially that point about if you get reached out by the analyst, don't count out the analyst because you never know when they're going to be the CEO. Very clever. Right. So we got a few follow-up questions from the audience for you. So the first one is from Lebuchang, who asked, was there an initial capital financing for your business? And then the follow-up is, if yes, did it come as equity finance or bank finance?
Yeah. So our first funding was equity finance. But we started the business before any funding. So my co-founder and I just started literally ourselves, and it was really, really, really small scale. And I think one of the things I'd said with that equity finance was the investors were willing to put in the cash because they figured out that whether they put the cash or not, like we would still run the business. We might not scale, we will not be big, but we would still survive. And I think that's a lot of things that investors look out for in founders. If the money finished, or if I didn't give this person money, will this business exist? So if you're thinking of starting a business, it's really important that you start, no matter how small. So when you meet investors, they're like, okay, there's something we can see to prove that this is actually a viable business.
Cool. And then Brian asked, what was the name of the organization that gave you your first 20K investment that you mentioned earlier?
I would drop it in the chat. They're called Ventures Platform.
Okay,
they only invest in equity. They only do equity, and mostly for like tech companies. But you can check them out.
And then Vutet asked if you can expand a little bit more on what your team looks like. To your second lesson of having the right team.
So we have about 2,000 people at Thrive. 1,800 field operations, and then we have 200 people that are core members of the team. And we have 9 members of the management team. So there's my co-founder and I. I'm pretty much just firefighting most of the time until like trying to grow the business. But he focuses a lot on like business. I focus on like tech partnership. We have a CFO who runs the operations end to end. So he sees like the big picture on just like cash flows, projections, fundraising. We have a head of risk who looks at like the supply chain risk, puts out the processes, the procedures, just how to ensure that even if we grow fast, things don't break as much because things will still break. We have a head of people and culture who helps us to like define culture, onboard people off board, just ensure everyone's happy. And then we have someone driving growth and communications. I think I've pretty much covered like my main team, but like, I mean, the team itself is broken into like growth, product, commercial, corporations, finance. Like, but you don't need to follow our structure, to be honest. I feel like there's a certain level of structure for like where your business is on your onset. So as I said, pre-COVID, it was just my co-founder and I, that my management team. Maybe one hire that could have been there then was probably like a head of finance. But you don't want to over-hire at an early stage. Another thing you could potentially do is, if you're a solo founder, maybe get a co-founder that complements you in a certain skill. So say you were building a tech product, but your expertise is in sales, maybe a co-founder that can actually build a product, so you can save cost in tech, and then just that experience. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Then we have someone anonymous, but they ask, how do you attract high-value co-founders when you're an early stage startup? Because it sounds like you and your co-founder complement each other quite well.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much been like most great companies have probably been like either they were brothers or they were like friends from way back. But a lot of time you probably want to find somebody within your network that you think is the right person. I'm sometimes a total stranger, and it's totally fine to spend some time 3 months together, just trying to figure out like, are you guys great for each other? Getting a co-founder is sort of like getting married, to be honest. So you sort of like want to spend time thinking about that process. I think that one of the other things you should do, and some strange thing I've seen, is when people get co-founders, they're like, oh, I started this idea, so I would have like 95% of the company and give my co-founder like 5%. And this is probably like, I don't know, a business that has like maybe 2 customers. And it's just interesting to see people talk about like who started the idea should get 95%. So I think one of the things that's worked for us is most times try to ensure like the equity is as close to equal as possible. Even if there will be a difference for decision making, you want to ensure your co-founder is fully vested. You also want to ensure that your co-founder is somebody that has a complementing skill, right? You guys don't have the same set of skills, and then it's like both of you are going to the same meetings. In our years of building Thrive, my co-founder and I have probably attended maybe just like less than 5 meetings together. We've never needed to be in the same room. So we have like different skills, and then we're just chasing like different things entirely. So it's important that you want to have someone that complements you, not someone that does exactly the same thing as you.
Cool. And then another, Kevin has asked, how can you briefly talk to us about Thrive Academy? That's something new that's also been blowing up my LinkedIn feed. And also her second question is, how do you identify which investment instrument is suitable for your business, since you've had experience with a couple?
Yeah. So Thrive Academy is something that we've had internally for a while, and it's sort of like just a platform to develop the employees internally, ensure that we could upskill both soft skills, tech skills, whatever it was, just to ensure that everyone that comes to Thrive is better after a couple of months and years. But now we're trying to open that to the public, and we're starting with tech talents. So we want to, I think our goal is to get 10,000 signups. Interesting, actually, when we started out, when we listed out that we're trying to do that, we got, we felt like we just get like 100 people and then like train them with tech skills. But then we got to 4,000 signups, and now we're like, why not just get to like 10,000? So that's our aim. And the idea is we bring everybody into a room, train them on just like basic tech skills, help them understand like where they are best focused on, and then eventually taking like a couple people as interns, train them, give them skills, whether that's front end or back end, and then they can then go ahead to come full time into Thrive or go to any other organization. But that's just our idea of like giving back to the community, basically. You can check out on LinkedIn. It's just you'll see the sign up. I think it's probably like the last 3 to 4 posts, and then we're only accepting invites from Nigeria for now. Sorry about that. We're expanding to the other markets soon. But like if you're in Nigeria and you're trying to get into tech, feel free to sign up. Answering the second question around what sort of instruments make sense. I would say you probably want to ask like an investment advisor about this. So don't take my word to go sign up on something, but I'll give a general advice. So I'll say just starting out really early on, we are experimenting, trying to figure out what to do, what the product should be. You probably want to rely a lot on equity, because that's actually someone giving you money to say, let's pilot this thing together. I mean, go figure this out. If it works, amazing. But if it doesn't work, you are not indebted, right? So you don't want to run into debt, like trying to figure out an idea. Another thing that could work there is probably grants. Although, I mean, with grants, sometimes you want to have been like at a bigger stage. So it's probably like you've shown some good work and then you want a grant to experiment something or pilot something. And then the grant guys are then willing to give you grants. But I'm not sure you get grants just started out the business, but it is possible. There are probably a few grants here and there. So I would say probably go for equity and a mix of grants. When you figure out your business model and your unit economics are really, really great, and then you probably could look at debt. So I'll give an example. Say you wanted to build a factory that produces popcorn, for example, right? You probably want to start out with, and let's say you've been doing this for a while, but you want to scale it up. So maybe you could get debt for like working capital to buy, if it's the maize or what you use for the popcorn. And then maybe you get some part of equity for like the actual building of the factory. Maybe things that are to hire people, pay a few people, and then maybe like a longer term equity that then pays over the factory in about 3 to 4 years. Just a different blend of instruments about it. But I mean, speak to an investment advisor. Don't take my word for it.
Yeah, so we had an anonymous attendee also asked that they said that they noticed that Thrive relies heavily on debt and not too much on equity. So what sort of drove that decision for you specifically?
So it's a mix of both. So at the initial time in Thrive, we raised equity. So we got into, after raising from ventures platform, we got into YC. YC is probably like one of the best accelerators in the world, and we raised some money and we built out the model. And at the point when we built out the model, it was profitable. And so all we needed to scale within Nigeria was then to raise debt. So debt has been essentially just a scale up. So it's like we have positive unit economics. We know that if we add 1 + 1, it's a pull out 2. And it made sense to scale with debt. But then as we begin to try to do new pilots, expand into markets, then we would raise equity for that, if that makes sense. So equity helps to like expansion, trying new markets, experimentations. But then when you figure out your business model, then you raise debt. So that's like how we've gone around that.
Okay, and then we've also got a question from Shona on how did you go about initiating your first USAID funding round?
There was a call for application actually. So there are actually always lots of calls for application. There's a website you could check. It's called Opportunities. Skips my mind. I'll find it. I'll send it to Tyra. But there are like a couple of websites where they list out like these opportunities from time to time. And it's called for application to share about what you're doing. I think this was focused on investment in the agri space in Africa, in West Africa, and we applied for it. So that was how I went about it. We just applied. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Opportunity desks.
Thanks, Alex. So we also had someone ask, Chazale said, what would be the best way to finance expansion, and what lessons have you got from raising funding specifically for expansion?
Definitely equity. I would say definitely equity and a mix of grants, if you could get grants. But yeah, that's what you want to use. If you've spent time studying the markets and like maybe running pilots, then maybe you could raise debt to just like double down on like your proving hypothesis. But I would say you want to think about equity to expand into new markets.
Cool. And then a very specific question from Ibrahim. So what do you advise those coming up on the Nigerian agri-tech space, especially those focusing on smallholder farmers and cashless policy?
Yeah. I would say just start, right? I would say like literally, no matter how complicated you think it is, even if it means like starting off like literally 2 farmers, right? And just stay consistent, keep showing up. Because eventually, whether it's you're applying to ABH, so for instance, if you're applying to ABH, you have to have extended for like 3 years. And for many other organizations, they just really want to know that you understand the business, you've been doing it for a while, no matter the scale you've been doing it at. Because an investor wants to know that once I give you money, you are not essentially experimenting from start, you're just scaling up, basically. So I would say you want to get started, you want to prove it for a while, and then eventually you're just able to raise investment. So my advice would be start.
Okay. And a question from Pacho is, what are some of the challenges you're currently facing?
Well, for one, there's a cashless policy that just came up. So that's a bit of a challenge right now that we're trying to figure out. But we are navigating around it. I would say in other markets where we're trying to expand to, hiring is like a very big deal. So finding people is a really difficult thing. So trying to figure that out also. But just generally, hiring is also a big deal, like finding good quality people who understand the work, are passionate about the market, are passionate about the industry. Is definitely a challenge. I know this sounds ironical, but like actually also money. I know it looks like we raised a lot, but like we have like pretty ambitious vision. So our goal is to get to 11 million farmers in 2027. And that literally means more capital to be able to do that. So yeah, I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then just on the customer side, Nicholas asked, what is your customer retention rate?
I think right now is actually somewhere close to 90 something said. And the reason is our model is essentially providing credits to farmers, and then we only get paid at the end of the season. So it's like a very interesting win-win model. So we don't they don't need to pay to join us. They have to go through some tests, go through some requirements, but it's essentially free to come on board Thrive. And so most farmers find it as a win-win. So we rarely have drop-offs.
Wow, that's super interesting. We do have a couple more questions in the chat, but I'm conscious of time. So I'm going to welcome Charlotte back for a quick fireside chat. But before we get into that, I just want to let everyone know we are recording the session. So we'll share the recording as well as the presentations early next week. So you'll be able to rewatch it, because I know we've gotten a lot of very valuable insights from both Charlotte and Ayo that I know has been hard to keep track of all of the nuggets of wisdom they've been sharing. Cool. Charlotte, are you with us? Do you have power?
I am with you. I just need you to turn my video on and we're good to go.
There we go. I've made you a co-host, so you should be able to turn your video on. Awesome. It's still so nice and light in Nairobi now.
Yeah, I got my, it's about 6:13 p.m. So yeah, still good. But I'm also there's a lot of lighting in my office.
Mm-hmm. So first up, I'm gonna start with sort of a general question. Go to you first, Charlotte. So do you think there's any significance that both you and Ayo come from countries that have these large populations that are growing, very active tech industries?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question, because it's been a point of discussion for many African entrepreneurs on the reasons why Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa as well are essentially like the entrepreneurs who come from there are probably the most successful. It could be the competition factor. Like there's so many of us, and you will find that an entrepreneur from Nigeria, like from the same beginnings as me, with the same resources as me, in a sense is better than you at even pitching, just because they have had to compete against so many people. So by the time they get to that level, and maybe you're with AO and you're competing for Africa Business Heroes and you're pitching, and it's just so better, it's annoying. But we try, Kenyans try. But if you compete with someone again, for instance, from Botswana, you realize that you might be on the same level, but their game is a little bit down, just because there's so many of us, there's so much competition, you have to scramble for opportunities, and you have to always be better than the next person. So that could be a very big factor as to why a lot of us, well, not a lot of us, some of us achieve success, because if you go back and see how many people haven't really achieved success from these areas, then you will see that the percentages are not as high as they should be, considering the fight that we have in us. But yeah, it is a big factor.
Ayo, what are your thoughts on that? Have you had to scrap it out a lot more with the competition in Nigeria?
Yeah, I agree with Charlotte on that. I think, even if you look at ABH, outside this last year, most times like they're probably like 4 Nigerians always in the top 10. So yeah, like you're constantly like Nigerians are everywhere. And so it's sort of that thing where you sort of had to improve. You're always competing. There's someone building like 10 people building what you're thinking about. So I'd say that's really helped. But it's also we also have like a very mature ecosystem. So there's a lot of founders who have built stuff, who have become unicorns that you can rely on from time to time. You can see and then just like share what you're going through and your challenges. So I would say definitely, it's definitely helped.
Okay. And then Ayo, do you have any advice for Charlotte trying to get into Nigeria? Since you haven't shared with her before.
No, Charlotte is good. She has many Nigerian friends. That's why she doesn't call me. So
let me tell you something, Taya. Ayo is very good friends with Kevin. I am best friends with Kevin, and I have never like had a conversation with Ayo, so it's very funny. But the next time I go to Nigeria, I'm gonna like lock him down for like a coffee date to get some advice. Yeah.
Any advice ahead of the coffee date, Ayo?
I don't know. Just I guess, yeah, just have a fighting spirit. I mean, many like Nigeria requires it to be tough a lot of times. So don't take no for an answer. Just keep trying, I guess. That's like the easiest thing I can think about. But yeah, I think you'll be fine. Nigerians are also like really welcoming. So you'll be good.
Yeah, I gotta say that is true, or at least the Nigerians in our ABH community. You guys were all biggest group, but all so welcoming and lovely. And as you're both ABH veterans, I want to touch on sort of the softer side and the connections you've made through the competition. I know Kevin is also one of our 2019 alumni, friends with Ayo, besties with Charlotte. So, you know, Ayo is part of our initial cohort. And like beyond Kevin, do you have any friends you've made since a very interactive physical pre-COVID competition? And are those sort of lasting friendships that you've built and helped your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met with Aichi, Tosan, Tega, Ikena, the entire Nigerian crew. Well, most of them, we hang out like quite a lot. And just like catch up. We hung out. Kevin was in Nigeria in December, and then we all had like dinner. So yeah, I mean, and it's like it's really amazing community. I spoke to the guy that won last year, Tanzania, and he's sort of like trying to help us make introductions to expand into Tanzania. And it's I guess like the best part about ABH is even if like they're not friends, and then as long as like they're in the WhatsApp group, if you message them and be like, oh, I'm trying to come into this market, can you help me figure something out? They will. Like I texted Etel, I think a couple months ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm looking for some people in Zambia, and she forwarded me some CVs, and we don't talk often, but like they're just like willing to help. So that's really amazing.
That's great. And Charlotte, how have you managed to build bonds? Because your year, 2021, we were fully online. You didn't get to meet until last year when we were fortunate enough to all meet in person. And Kevin's much earlier in the 3 years before you in the competition. So how have you made these connections?
Yes, I have managed actually. I think Kevin is from everybody else. Kevin and Violet, I am not gonna say right now who is my best friend because they will both kill me, but I am very close to the two of them. Navalayo is essentially my lawyer. Like every time I have like a legal question, because Nava is a lawyer, I will go to her. She is like, she will, Kevin just texted, she's my best friend, this girl. But yeah, so I have made some really great connections. There's some people like Tesh who I knew before ABH, so we were already friends. And then there's some who like Ikena, we are not like, we don't chat often, but if I need his help with something, it's as simple as asking, like Ayo said, you can just text someone, and it's more of, we are all like brothers and sisters. And at the end of the day, we're trying to help each other succeed. And so even if you see someone has gone through a competition and they were good at it, you can just ask them, hey, how did you do that? Give me some pointers so that I'm the next, winner of this thing, or I get investment from this person. So it's been really, really amazing just seeing how those connections, especially for us, we didn't meet a lot of the people. And I think just seeing someone online, you don't know who they are. I didn't know Violet could be like fun, but then Violet is also helping me set up, in Ghana. And it's helped a lot. It's helped a lot with so many of the things that we're trying to achieve, especially scaling across Africa. And you have these great resources, which is African entrepreneurs spread across the entire continent. It's like magic, right? So I want to go to Nigeria, who on the list, we have a lot of Nigerians who has the brightest smile today. Let me talk to them because they're in a good mood, but you have options. And that, I think, is the beauty of Africa Business Heroes, especially for me now that I'm trying to get into the markets they're already in.
Oh, super good. So yeah, I guess it doesn't hurt to ask is the sort of overarching point that I've heard from both of you. And entrepreneurs want to help each other grow as much as you're competing against each other. So the last topic I want to briefly touch on, because I see we're almost at the end, is sort of how do you balance being a successful entrepreneur, all these competitions, these prizes, the raising, expansion, and also having a healthy personal life. Because we know mental health is always a hot topic. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs, you get burnout, but you got to keep grinding and working hard. So Charlotte, I'm going to come to you first, and then Ayo, I'll let you add in after that.
Yeah, that's a great question because, I'm married, I have 2 kids, I'm never home. My oldest daughter went to boarding school when I was in the UK. I wasn't there. That was her first day in school. It was painful. It was just, I felt like a horrible mom because, you want to be there, but then you also want to be successful because if you stay home and just do that, then people are like, hey, you grow and you're not growing even though you're also a good entrepreneur. So it's like no competition, but I'm very competitive. So I think what helps is I have a coach, I have a therapist, I have an executive mentor, just this village of people you can go to with this just loads of sometimes it's traumatic, the things that you miss out on, or sometimes even something as simple as getting into an argument with your partner and you have a call with Tahira in 5 minutes. So you cannot complete that argument, and that's not healthy because the call with Tahira is important. So it's very important that after you jump off of that call with Tahira, you call Kevin for jokes or something, or she's in Nairobi, you can go for coffee dates. But those villages, I think, are what has really helped. And for me, it's sort of not one thing like fits all. I think just being able to disconnect from the rest of the world and go somewhere else, to not think about business. Sometimes it's hard, especially the first few years. But as you grow, you get more people in, then you get that opportunity to get out and go take care of yourself. But it's very important, especially I think for Africans, to recognize that therapy is not a luxury, coaching is not a luxury, it's not something that only people in the West are supposed to do. You can do that for yourself, doing something like maybe getting out of the house and going out for lunch when you have some work thing like ABH requires a report from you, but you are experiencing burnout, and putting that on the side and recognizing that this is urgent. But what's more urgent is that I do something to not lose my mind. So that has really helped. But at the end of the day, we are human. We miss out on such things and we lose our minds, and then we come back to it. And it's just praying at this point that it doesn't all crumble down.
Ayo,
anything to add, or do you echo some of Charlotte's points?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything she says. I think I don't think I have it figured out. I think I'm still trying to find it. But I think one of the things to do is a lot of times, because you've been an entrepreneur, it might not be realistic for you to say, oh, I will disconnect, I will close 5 p.m. every day, or I would resume only at 8 a.m., or I wouldn't work weekends. So maybe find what works for you, right? If that means it's on Sundays, I won't go to the office, even if I work 20 hours every other day. If that means once a month, I would travel away for a weekend. I don't know, whatever it is, but just find a way to blow off steam and just connect with yourself. But yeah, that's I don't have it figured out, but those are some of the things I'm trying. I'll let you know how it goes.
Definitely keep us posted. I think it'll help a lot of entrepreneurs as well. Charlotte, Ayo, thank you both so much. Charlotte, I know you got to run to another big meeting. We do have a quick question, a quick poll for the audience. So please don't drop off just yet. I'm going to pull it up right now. We just want to sort of get your feedback on how the event has gone. So please feel free to just share your answers. We're also very excited to announce, in case if you saw our website, you would have seen the cat's out of the bag. The ABH 2023 competition is going to be kicking off on the 3rd of March. That is next week, Friday. So if you want to join Charlotte and Ayo as some of our future heroes, please sign up. We're looking for some of the brightest African entrepreneurs from across the continent. And I'm very confident that I'm sure we've got a lot of you in the audience here today. Please also do take the time to complete the poll. It helps us improve on these scale-up sessions in the future. It's super duper short. There's also a question at the end about what you want to hear at these other sessions. We might get Kevin in because we know she's so connected with our other heroes or some of the other entrepreneurs that we have. But again, big thank you to Ayo and Charlotte for joining today, sharing the super insightful content. Thank you to our audience. You guys have stayed strong and on. I know an hour and a half on a Thursday afternoon is long, but thank you for staying through, staying with us, for answering our poll. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Super excited. Next week, Friday, keep an eye out for that. We have some interesting things planned on the way because it is ABH's 5th year anniversary. So thank you all again. And the next Scale Up will be in about 3 months. So keep an eye on your inboxes and we'll keep you posted on that. Before you drop off again, please just complete a quick poll to help us do better next time, to give you sort of what you need. And thank you again, everyone. Have a lovely Thursday afternoon and a wonderful weekend.